Well, for the first time, we're going to see if four guys can operate on the same five-tool baseball podcast as we continue our series with S2 Cognition. Happy to be joined again by Dr. Scott Wylie, of course, Drew Bishop, and the man himself, Mr. Five-Tool Baseball, Lynn Vanlandingham. I don't know why it's taken, episode 36 to finally get Lynn on here, but he has joined us. Lynn, first off, let's start with you. I recall having a long phone conversation with you months and months ago about S2 and how excited you were, and you were just explaining to me this product that you guys were working with. So what was kind of the genesis behind the partnership with Five-Tool and S2 Cognition, and why were you so fired up? Because you're a guy that you get pitched a lot of things. What was it about S2 that immediately grabbed your attention that, man, this is a game changer type of product?
Well, Dustin, thanks for having me. It was interesting because I had went out to watch Joe Dillon's son play. They played at Texas Tech after I was through playing back when they got really good. And so what I did is I was out there just to see Joe. And, at the time, Joe was a big league hitting instructor for the Phillies. And, we were just in the dugout, talking about different things and how technology changed the game. And, I told him I had a little bit of disappointment in regards to some of the things that we're pushing towards these young players. And he said, "Hey, I've got something for you." And we just started talking about it. And, it really intrigued me because I tried to relate it back to when I played and started trying to analyze the impacts it might have had on me as a player. And then also, how it relates to the instincts you have on a player as a coach and how that's relevant to how he plays. And it just generated a lot of excitement, being a guy that failed in the game at the Division I level to some extent, just trying to understand what I could have been able to do differently that would have led to a little more success. And, there's thousands of things that I've analyzed and looked at, and, quickly became educated on the fact that, I had a perception issue and I had an issue with distraction. And, if I would have known that about myself, then I could have put myself in a much better position to be successful. And, it just kind of ties in with what we want to do as an organization. I tell people all the time, I hope that your son plays on television, but that's not really what we're after. What we're after is trying to create an environment where, a young player stays around the game one more year. And why that's important to me is because the impact that this game has had on my life, and every single year that you stay around this game, I think it creates the opportunity for a young man to become, a better husband, a better father, a better employee, and a better man. And as corny as it sounds, I'm living proof of that, being a Dutch redneck from West Texas. and this game and God and my bride of 33 years have really created, unbelievable things in my life. And on the game side of it, it's just really important to me that these kids stay around it. And I think this is the opportunity for a young player to maximize his ability to play the game as long as he possibly can. And I think it's a tool that we have now that might be something that allows you to play a little longer than your actual ability would allow you to play, if you know this about yourself and you're able to apply what this product gives you the opportunity to apply.
Yes, Scott, we've talked already a little bit about the actual assessment, and then talked with Paul Phillips about how you take the assessment and what do you do. But the development has always been at the forefront of this product, figuring out from a cognitive standpoint, how players' brains are wired and how that translates to baseball. How do you see what S2 started out to do fitting with Five-Tool?
Yeah, my favorite phrase that I've heard Lynn use is, I want to help kids maintain that skill level and that enthusiasm to play one more year. And I think that really captures where our heart is too. There's a lot of there are a lot of things that athletes need to do to play one more year, to develop their skills and their talents. And And certainly the predominant focus has been on the physical and the mechanical. Tricky thing is as you move up the ladder and play that next year, the decision-making demands of the game are greater. So, you know, the velocity increases, the quality pitching increases, and as a hitter, it's all about making better decisions. And so, you know, that has been something that we, you know, set out to help hitters not only understand themselves, but then have at least some path or some guide to know what to work on and how to work on the decision making and quick decisions and being the best, most efficient thinker you can be out on the field. And, you know, I think that's a piece of the puzzle that Lynn describes in driving kids to be able to play and want to play at the next level.
And Lynn, now that we've been able to kind of get this out in the open, you know, with S2, what kind of feedback have you received? You know, because I mean, I remember you tweeted something probably a few months ago, and you said you get this response on your phone about people. What are you talking about? What is this? Because you know, you talk about an exciting product and things like that, and new development and stuff. And in baseball, people are going to be interested. So now that you've been able to actually see this in action a little bit from the testing side, and you've gotten feedback from whether it's players, coaches, high school coaches, club coaches, whatever it is, what kind of response have you received about S2 and about that technology and product?
Well, you know, we've introduced this to several guys that played the game at a very high level. You know, Chris Edelstein, you know, Zach Dillon, Danny Hamblin, Kyle Hancock, you know, Pat Wood, Hunter Lockwood. And that's kind of that was my first litmus test in running this through this. There were two things that really captured my attention on this. And the first one was being, you know, the first time I talked to Paul Phillips, it was all about player development, which really, really excited me. And, you know, in 2 episodes ago, I heard Drew talking about, you know, punching holes in things. And I'm wired a little bit the same way for a lot of reasons. But I remember, you know, asking Scott when he said, hey, you know, we've got 10 big league teams that use it. And I said, well, okay, why is it only 10? And then when he told me, well, because those 10 are paying us to not let the other 20 have it, I thought, oh, okay, well, there's something to this. But the exciting thing about it is, you know, the guys that we're so blessed to be around in the game, the unbelievable clubs that we're associated with, the thing that's so great about being aligned with those guys is they have a passion for their players being the best that they can possibly be. And when we brought those guys in that are all real good baseball guys and showed them what the product was, just seeing their response and they're talking about what this could do for their players and, you know, them relating it to a specific player was awesome. And then, you know, the other thing that was exciting about it is, you know, we were blessed to go test Texas A&M, you know, Oklahoma and Tennessee. And, you know, those are some of the greatest amateur baseball players in the world. And to see how they were challenged and how they responded to it, how inquisitive they were in regards to what it meant, talking about how well this part of it was so hard. And then getting those results and seeing Paul and Scott talk to those kids, and they basically could, you know, give a pretty good outline on what those players struggle with. And, you know, in this game, it is so hard. You know, we go up and we fail. And a lot of times you walk away from the box and you just don't know why. And now that you have the ability to know why you're struggling in a certain area and giving you the opportunity to go and address that and train for it is really, really exciting. I mean, we're going to eliminate the why. And that way, I think, you know, what I always say is that what this gives a player the ability to do is, you know what you are, you know what you're not, and then you can put yourself in a position to not be something that you're not. And really, if you look at the game of baseball, and especially as a hitter, that is basically defining what approach means. You know, if you go to the plate with an approach, putting yourself in a position to not be successful because you're not really wired to do that, then you're already behind the game. If you go in and you have an approach based upon what your strengths are and you know what those are, it just gives you the opportunity to be more successful in every single at bat. And that's the thing that's exciting to me. And, you know, I'm a little disappointed that Scott didn't have this back in 1988. I think that's extremely selfish of him, where I think it really could have helped me. And I honestly believe this could have helped me play a little longer. And that's what's so exciting about this.
Yeah. So, you know, this is for both Scott and Lynn. You know, where do you see it going from here? Obviously, we've been in the beginning stages of starting to test some programs, and, you know, at the college level and then at the high school level. What's kind of the next step in this, and how do people get more information if they're interested?
Well, that's where you come in, Drew. So, you know, we're gonna set up a hotline to Drew Bishop.
Yeah.
You know, and we'll have information coming out for people. You know, we've got a big round of testing that we're doing this weekend, Saturday in Houston, Sunday in Dallas. You know, Scott and the guys at S2 have some tremendous technology that are going to allow us the opportunity to basically set up S2 labs, you know, with our partner clubs, to give these players the opportunity to get in there and see this assessment, and more importantly, you know, train on this assessment. And you know, it's going to be just slightly a paradigm shift in the game of baseball. We all understand how important confidence is, but, you know, if you want to improve in an area that you have a deficiency, you know, even in the training aspect of it, you need to have some failure to give yourself the opportunity to overcome it. And, you know, there's going to be a balance in regards to doing that versus building confidence, you know, before your next outing or whatever it is. But we have to do that. And we see this in all aspects of the game of baseball. You know, one of the things that I constantly hear from young hitters is they hate hitting off the pitching machine. Well, there's a reason for that. You know, it's harder to hit because the spin rate's higher, the ball carries more, and it's a challenge. But, you know, when I was talking to Max Muncy one day, and I had this conversation with you know, several pro guys, and asked them, you know, how often do you hit off the pitching machine? Well, every day. You know, and so if we don't have a paradigm shift in the game in regards to challenging ourselves in our training, it's going to do two things. One, it's going to put you in a position to have more success. And two, you know, really, it's basically training yourself for failure that you can carry over to the field to put yourself in a position to not allow one at bat to impact three more at bats. And that's the thing that's exciting. We'll be rolling out this new product where we can have these testing facilities, you know, throughout the country, where players can come in and not only get the assessment, but also work with their professional hitting instructor to have a plan to improve in the areas that they need to improve in.
Yeah. And Lynn too, you know, we've touched on this a little bit, but coming from yourself, who's a parent of multiple sons that played baseball growing up, you know, you've referred to this as possibly being you know, the SAT for baseball. Talk a little bit about that. And, you know, for parents out there listening, explain, you know, what your thinking is on that, and how this can, you know, turn into that for the baseball world.
Well, what you're looking at is you're looking at a piece that for years and years has been immeasurable. You know, we've had these conversations. I don't think that this gives you a 360-degree perspective on a player, but it's at least 300 plus now, with, I think, some tools to help you with that missing piece, which is the emotional part of the game and the dealing with failure. And, you know, when you look at, you know, Alabama football's using it, you know, Nick Saban, and, you know, LSU's football team's using it. There's multiple sports, you know, there's, I think, 6 NFL teams that are using it. There's something to this for people to really go in and understand cognitively the impact that player can have beyond his physical ability. And, you know, I mean, listen, this is one piece of the puzzle. You know, if you've got 103 mile an hour bat exit speed and have a hole in your barrel, doesn't really matter. You know, and if you score really high cognitively and then you don't have the physical skills, there's going to be some challenges. All of these things work together to put a player in a position to be the best that he can be. And I think, you know, when you look at the world of analytics and everything that's going on, you know, started in MLB and now it's leaking down into collegiate baseball, and you're going to see it continue to go down to, you know, high school baseball. Having this piece of the puzzle, I think, is critical for a player to know where he's at if he's going to have the opportunity to maximize his ability to play this game as long as he possibly can, which is ultimately what our goal is.
Yeah, Scott, I think, sometimes if parents or young players are listening to this and they're thinking, man, these guys are doing an assessment where they're figuring out what's going on in our brain and this and that, you might get these grand visions of like having to stick yourself in like the equivalent of an MRI machine or a tube or something like that. But I think one of the beauties of this product is it's so easy. Can you describe just the general testing process, but also too, you guys have been able to now, because we're getting this into the hands of more people, to actually get some data about improving in the drills and that sort of stuff, that you can take the assessment and actually apply it with these instructors at these facilities and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a couple important points. If you're a parent listening to this and you hear the word brain, that automatically sends up some cautionary flags. And I get that. I think it's really important to understand that first, we're measuring the decision-making processes, the split-second cognitive skills that you need when you play. So these skills are not the same skills you use in the classroom. These skills are not related or correlated with IQ, book smarts. That's what's so important to understand. And so these skills are a different set of skills you need when you have sub-second time frames to make decisions and to organize what you see and decide what you saw and organize your motor system to react as efficiently as possible. So I think that should relieve some of the concern. This isn't going to say anything about, we, as we mentioned earlier, we work with a bunch of college programs, and we started off in football. And one of the reactions that was so positive was, hey, what we love about this evaluation is it's not correlated with book smarts or grade point average. We've got some athletes who, for various reasons, struggle in the classroom, but when they cross those white lines, their brain comes to life. And that's because it requires a different set of cognitive skills to perform on the field than it does in the classroom. And so I think that's important. We're isolating and focusing in on a very specific set of cognitive skills that are related to play and performance. The other thing is, we don't have to, in our research labs, we've done everything from brain imaging and electrodes on the scalp to record brain activity, brain stimulation studies. We've even done some cool stuff where we're recording from single cells in the brain, neurons in the brain, during neurosurgeries while patients are awake and doing some of these reaction tasks. We don't have to do any of that. We don't have to put it in burning holes in the brain and in the skull. We just sit athletes in front of these laptop computers. We've got some special response pads that allow us to ensure millisecond level precision. You can't use standard iPads or laptops because they just don't have the hardware to allow for millisecond precision. So we take it seriously. We use the same technological approaches we would use in our science labs to ensure millisecond precision. And all you have to do is put athletes in front of a screen and either present things really fast, moving quick, flashing on the screen quick, and push around the speed of presenting that information to see how fast they can process what they see, how fast they can make predictions about something that's moving, or have them react fast and look at their timing systems and how well they control impulses and improvise their actions. And we're talking about a few decisions and processes that unfold in a few hundred milliseconds, and equipped with these tasks that have been studied for decades in the sciences, that have been studied with imaging and fancier brain imaging technologies. But we just need the tasks. The tasks tell us about the unique differences between every athlete in terms of how they process what they see and how they organize and control their reaction and response systems.
And Scott, one of the things that I wanted to bring back up that we touched on with Paul a little bit yesterday was the idea that there are going to be, in all likelihood, some areas on the test where you don't perform very well, right? You know, some of the scores are linked to each other and some are not. And especially for some of the age group that's going to be listening to this, those parts of the brain haven't completely come online yet. So talk a little bit about what a person can take from the score. And then one thing I don't think we've mentioned a whole lot is how is the results page set up? You know, I think we know it because we've seen it, but it's organized in a fashion of, hey, these are areas that you need to continue to work on and own a little bit. These are some areas that you need to spend some time at. And these are some areas that you do need some definite improvement in.
Yeah, no, I think right out of the gates, the most important thing to acknowledge is that nobody likes low scores. We haven't met an athlete that, you know, the first thing they look at when they look at our score sheet, which is percentiles of how you rank to the reference group, their eyes go right to the low scores. And that's just human nature. And nobody likes low scores. But it's just the reality. I mean, if you took, you know, we always use the example, if you took Major League Baseball players and you ranked order everybody in the big leagues in terms of their bat speed, somebody in the big leagues benched against other big leaguers is at the first percentile, has the slowest bat speed. They're still a big leaguer though, but they may have all these other physical characteristics where they're at the 80th percentile, the 50th percentile. By definition, when you reference to an elite group of athletes, by definition, the midpoint is the 50th percentile, and half the reference group is going to be below and half's going to be above. And so you expect to have some low areas. You know, every athlete has incredible physical strengths and they can tell you what they are, but they probably could also, if they're honest, tell you about what things they struggle with and what they're trying to improve in the weight room, on the field. And so I think the healthy perspective is it's fun to know the things you do well, but if you're going to be good in anything on the field and probably in life, it's important to understand your challenge areas, your weaker areas, so that you can work around them, adapt around them, and then hit hard training opportunities that exist. And so I think it's really important to kind of keep in perspective. Yeah, you know, we've done thousands and thousands of athletes at all levels, and very rarely do you see someone who just knocks every cognitive skill out of the ballpark and they're above the 80th percentile on everything. And that's just because these systems are independent, and you may be high in some and low in others. And you're exactly right. Our report presents the data in percentile format, how you ranked compared to the reference group. And then we break down in a player development section and kind of realign and reprioritize the areas that you probably need to fine tune and maintain and make sure you're taking advantage of your strengths. Just because you have cognitive strengths doesn't mean you are utilizing them in the game of baseball. And if you have a lot of high cognitive skills, you may never have trained to sharpen those in the game of baseball. And so high scores need to be trained and fine-tuned and challenged, whereas your intermediate and lower level scores, you know, we prescribe a series, a progression of drills, going from more controlled kind of drills to build basic foundational mastery of cognitive decisions and create kind of what we call a transfer path that looks more game-like and gets integrated into the game. And so I think understanding, hey, these are the things I need to fine tune. These are the skills that probably deserve a little bit more attention. And here are the areas, you know, it's going to take a lot of work. It's probably going to take time, but there's some adaptive strategies. I may need to change my approach, to Lynn's point earlier, based on who I am and who I'm not right now at this stage of the game. I think it's important to understand too that the evaluation just tells you how your systems work right now. So if you're a 13-year-old or a 14-year-old, your brain is going to continue to change and mature over the next several years. We actually don't use our evaluation as kind of the benchmark of the metric to assess the effects of your training on the field. When you train on the field, you want to use measures of success and improvement that are related to what you're doing on the field. Our assessment just tells you about your underlying cognitive capacities that you're bringing to the field. So we recommend once a year, just, 14 to 15 a year is a good amount of time for the brain to naturally change, and you can see how you stack up to the next group of players playing at that higher age. When we get into college, it's usually every 2 years. We get incoming freshmen and then rising juniors. Just the brain growth starts to slow a little bit after 18. It's still changing into your early mid-20s in some systems, but the rate of that change is a little slower.
Lynn, you mentioned early on about getting out in the fall to some of these big time college programs and testing them. We talk so much about, one of our goals is to help guys stay in the game and maybe play one more year, get that opportunity. How do you envision this becoming a part of the recruiting process, based on, what you know about S2 and also to those conversations that you've had with those college programs as they're starting to get immersed in this product and learn more about it?
Well, to a T, they all respond the same way. I mean, we've probably talked to, 15 different programs about this. And the first question they ask after they see the presentation is, hey, how do I get this information on recruits? It's just one more piece of the puzzle. I mean, you look at guys that, David Eckstein and won 2 World Series and, couldn't hit, couldn't run, couldn't throw. This type of thing from a cognitive standpoint, you can find players at a younger age that may not be developed physically yet that, are going to be guys that you want to keep an eye on. I think that's the perspective of it from the colleges is, we've all seen the guys that are extremely physically gifted and, can hit the ball, 500 feet and, have big arms and, you have guys that are 6'5" runners, but they play at 7 flat. Well, why is that? Well, then why do you have a 7 flat runner that plays at 6'5"? When you start understanding these things cognitively, it starts giving you information as to why that is, which it's even more insight for these colleges that are at a significant disadvantage in regards to the amount of money they have to invest in kids from a scholarship standpoint. I mean, you go at looking, trying to divide 11.7 against, 35 roster spots, of which 27 could be on, athletic aid. It's tough. And so I think the schools view it as the opportunity to also maximize their investment, as well as, go out and find those guys that, are the guys that, are just baseball players, or just dirt bags, they're just the guys that find a way to get it done. They're, you guys in your conversation with Muncie talking about the guys that are just winners. This gives you the opportunity to get a little bit of insight into that based upon how they're wired. And I think that's the thing that's so exciting. I've had some guys that have told me that, well, if I give this to my guy, it may hurt his recruiting, opportunities. Well, listen, the pool of guys that are going to play college baseball, it's the same size. Now this may reshuffle the deck a little bit in regards to, where a guy goes, as far as a Power 5 school to a mid-major or a junior college or whatnot. But ultimately, if you really love this game, playing college baseball is getting you into the right place to be able to play the game. I've never met very many baseball players that didn't like playing, and so I think this helps in a lot of different ways. I think it gives kids and parents the opportunity to be realistic about, what they are physically and cognitively and what might be the right spot for them to go to get started in the game. So, I think it's just going to have a major impact on all aspects of it. I think, it's going to be huge from an investment standpoint, for the players that are paying for professional lessons. Now you're committing that those funds are going to you, for you to be working on the things that you really need to be working on. And, I think it's just special in a lot of different areas. And that's why, I've used the term that I think this is a game changer in a lot of different ways across a lot of different sports, that I think is just going to create a lot of opportunities. But I also think this is going to make the game better, which is very important to me. Anytime you can take a group of players and give them the opportunity to be the best that they can possibly be, then you're associated with something that's making the game better. And for those of us that love the game, understand, how important that is to all of us to help advance the game of baseball.
Yeah. And I think, you mentioned something too. You're going to get a result. And to our point, the earlier that you get the information, the more time that you have to combat some of the possible deficiencies as your brain is growing. And that will allow the product on the field to not necessarily take as much of a hit. If you know how your brain is wired and you know how to address it, you could show somebody the scores, but if you've already worked on it, you may play above your scores. And I think that, I think that should be a goal for a lot of the kids that we're starting to get this in the hands of at an earlier and earlier age. Scott, I want to go back, we talk about the reference group. For people that are listening to this that are probably high school age kids, who will they be referenced against when it comes to the percentiles?
Yeah, there's probably a couple opportunities. I mean, we, for our MLB teams and college, we have tested a significant number of top high school players around the country. And so just kind of, there may be some aspirational interest in knowing how you stack up to the best high school players around the country. We have been at events all around the country too. So the next tier down might be broadly characterized as some of the top travel baseball teams around the country that are going to some pretty big events. And then certainly we have extensive databases at every age. And so you might just see more generally how you stack up to competitive baseball players your age. And, not surprising as you start to filter athletes going up the chain, the required level of cognitive skill starts to increase.
Now, Lynn, this whole thing is kind of an infomercial, for lack of a better word, but for those parents or players or even those coaches, high school club, whatever, that are listening to this, and in their head, they're like, it might just be on the fence for whatever reason, because this is just so unique, because there hasn't been a product that can quantify this data before. What would be your general pitch or message to them about the benefits, both from a player standpoint, a parent standpoint, a coach standpoint? I got to think that whole relationship between coach and player could really benefit from this evaluation piece. And for the parents too, you're being more efficient with your time, your resources, you're getting something out of it because of what this data presents.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm telling you, I would just tell everybody, hey, just look at it. I mean, that's what I did. And then, talk to people about it and made an assessment on it. I think, the thing that's exciting about it from a coach standpoint is, for years and years, we're always asking ourselves, well, hey, why is he swinging at this? Why is he swinging at that? I think this is the opportunity to make sure that you're coaching players the right way based upon the deficiency that they have. And, listen, I went through the whole thing of, coaching my kids and watching my kids and being at games and asking myself why they were doing this and why they were doing that. Everybody, when they step out on the field, wants to be successful. There's not a specific kid that goes out there and goes, hey, listen, I just want to fail today. But I think it's just like why this is so important from a player standpoint. When the why in regards to why you struggle in certain areas gives you the opportunity to be better. As a coach, when the why as to why a player struggles in a specific area, it gives you a chance to be a better coach. And as a parent, when the why of why your son struggles in certain situations, it gives you the opportunity to be a better parent and to support that young man and to help him with this failure and, not create additional frustration. This game is hard. I'm telling you, I always have this conversation with parents, maybe not completely relevant in regards to this, but, I think it is relevant when you understand, in what you need to do to support your players. But, I go back to an at-bat that I had at the University of New Mexico in 1988, tying run on third, tie ball game, 1 out. battled my tail off, got down 0-2, had probably a 10-11 pitch at bat. Knew the guy had thrown me back-to-back backdoor sliders that I fouled off. I knew he was going to throw me a fastball, and he did. And I froze and took it for a called strike 3. And what I tell everybody is that, my dad didn't have to remind me about that at bat. My girlfriend that became my wife didn't have to remind me about that at bat. My coach didn't have to remind me about that at bat. I'm 55 years old and I relive that at bat every day of my life, And so for everybody to kind of know what you are and know where you struggle, it gives everybody in that peer group for that player, himself mentally, his parents, his coach, the opportunity to understand the why and then to help apply the drill or the tool to help overcome that efficiency. That's why I think it's so important to give this a look, Dustin, and what Scott and those guys have developed and how it's been developed, I think is so powerful in regards to the scientific end of it versus the application of it of Paul Phillips, who played the game at the highest level, coached the game at the highest level, and has had a tremendous opportunity to have tremendous impact on so many players in regards to recognizing what these deficiencies are, so the players can maximize their ability to play the game as long as they possibly can. And I think if you look at it, you start to see those things, and then you can make your own determination in regards to, is the investment worth it?
Yeah, that's well said. And, thank you guys so much for the time. And I'm sure we can knock out hours, talking about this product and its impact on the game and just, people too, like you said, Lynn, people just being better versions of themselves just because they're armed with the right information. So you can better understand your son or your player or your teammate or whomever it is. So thanks again to both of you guys for hopping on board with us. Dr. Scott Wylie of S2 Cognition, Lynn Vanlandingham, Mr. 5-Tool Baseball himself, and of course, Drew Bishop joining me as always on the 5-Tool podcast. But, Scott, before we get you out of here, I'm going to put you on the spot here. If you've got these 3 other guys in the room, who do you think's pulling the highest S2 overall score? Who you putting your money on? But you might be cheating here because I think Drew has already taken the assessment. So
yeah, so I'm out.
So basically, it comes down to which of the 3 here do you think are pulling the highest overall S2 score? There's barbecue on the line. If you get this right, you get a free meal at Hard Eights next time you're in town. So no pressure.
Hey, Hard Eights.
Yeah.
Then let me revise my calculation here.
You can't just pick Lynn now just because you're trying to make him feel good. We'll put this to. I'm going to take the test, so we'll put this to the test.
Yeah, after adjusting for age, I would say Lynn emerges as the leader by a single percentile point.
leader by a credit card.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, guys, so much. Really appreciate the time. And you can get to s2cognition.com to learn more about this product, and of course 5tool.org. And feel free to email, text, call if you have our information. Reach out to us. I know we're so fired up about this partnership and getting this product in the hands of more baseball people and just really help them become better versions of themselves. So again, thanks guys. Thanks for the time, and we'll talk to y'all again soon.
Thank you guys. Have a great day.
Thanks again to Dr. Scott Wylie of S2 Cognition for joining us again. He's been a frequent visitor these recent podcast episodes. And Mr. 5-Tool himself, Lynn Vanlandingham, finally graces us with his presence on the 5-Tool podcast. No, I'm kidding. It's just the first time he's been on the podcast, but a lot of great stuff from both those guys. We've been around them a bunch as it relates directly to this product. So, I can't endorse it enough. I think the most important thing here is if you want more information about it, how do you get it? Go to s2cognition.com, go to 5tool.org. As Lynn said, we're going to be, and Scott both said, we're going to be testing more youth players coming up soon, both I believe in Houston and Dallas. And of course, you can email Drew at 5tool.org, or you can even email me, Dustin at 5tool.org, and I'll make sure it gets into the hands of the right people. But I think that, now that it feels like this is starting to get into more people's hands. There's starting to be more baseball people really start to understand, man, this is different. And you've kind of seen it more in the wild, Drew. The excitement level around this product and what's it like as you kind of see more people get tested at all levels and just their reactions to what it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's an amazing product. It's for the development of kids, which is obviously, as you could hear the passion in his voice, why Lynn has been so excited about this for a long time now. He spent the better course of a year now researching it, spending time with these guys to make sure it fits what our goals are, just like theirs. And so it's exciting now that we're finally at the point where we're going to start rolling it out and, look forward to the next step.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, if you're interested in it or want to hear more about it, s2cognition.com, 5tool.org, email us, Dustin@5tool.org and Drew@5tool.org. But that about wraps us up. I would say we talked about the national championship game last night, but I didn't think it was as good of a game as maybe the score indicated for much of it. But unfortunately, like, Paul might be a little upset when we talk to him later today, but I'm sure he's got about 9 other Nick Saban championships that he can lean on. But
has anyone heard from him today?
No, nobody's heard from him. We have to hear from him in a little bit, so hopefully he's doing okay. He'll probably console himself with some barbecue somewhere. That always cheers me up after a bad football result. But thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. Apple Podcasts, Podbean, YouTube. We're getting these all up everywhere. Follow us on Twitter. We're tweeting these bad boys as well, so we make it almost impossible to miss this content. But really, again, this wraps up our series with S2 in terms of the podcast. We can't endorse this enough. I think it's a game changer. Drew thinks it's a game changer. Everybody that comes in contact with it is just blown away. So really excited to start rolling this thing out and getting it to the hands of more baseball people. And as Drew just said, and as Lynn said, people become better versions of themselves when they're armed with the right information. And this is the type of information that just hasn't been able to be quantified before as it relates to baseball. So can't endorse it enough. Can't recommend it more. Get out there, learn more about it. And until we talk to you all next time, thank you for listening and take care.